Hello everyone, we are going to study and analyze the poem Heaven of Freedom by Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore wrote this poem in 1910 and it was included in his collection of poems Gitanjali in the year 1910. Later on, Tagore translated this poem into English and it was published in 1912 English edition of his poems. This poem was the 35th poem of Gitanjali. It is one of Tagore's most anthologized poems. Tagore received the Nobel Prize in 1913 and this poem was written before India's independence. This poem shows Tagore's vision of a new and awakened India. It is a simple prayer for his country, for India of the pre-independence times. The poem was entitled Chitto Jetha Boy Shuno in Bengali. This poem has inspired generations of Indians and Bangladeshis as well as the people of the whole world. The word Gitanjali means offerings of songs, and this word Gitanjali is mentioned in Tagore's citation when he received the 1913 Nobel Prize. Tagore yearns for the heaven of freedom many years before India attained independence. This poem urges the people of the whole world, particularly those who are living in conflict zones, to seek fearless truth as well as progressive thoughts and actions, and also to stand up and to see the whole world as united, undivided by borders of narrow domestic walls and selfish interests. The poem is written in the form of a prayer to God for a true freedom for India. Tagore sincerely urges God, prays to God to awake his fellow beings for the realization that the essential need in the world is to live in a free and united country. He wishes that his countrymen also should awake and enjoy the life which should be full of dignity as well as honor. Tagore lived in India during the British rule, so the theme of the poem Where the Mind is Without Free by Rabindranath Tagore is to seek freedom from colonization. Rabindranath Tagore writes, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. Where the mind is without fear. He says that a country should be such that there should be no fear in the minds of the people. People should not be afraid of anything. And the head is held high, and they should be able to hold their heads high. They must be proud of themselves. They must not be ashamed of anything. Where knowledge is free, and the country should be a place where knowledge is free for everyone. Everyone can attain knowledge. In the last line of the poem, we see that Rabindranath Tagore writes, into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Here he addresses God as my father. He prays to God that let his country, that is India, awake. that is, gain freedom. Into that heaven of freedom, into such an heaven of freedom where the mind is without free and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. He prays to God that let his country be awake in a world which has not been broken up, not been divided into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where people are not fighting with each other. He prays to God to make his country a heaven of freedom, where people live with dignity, and that is, they can hold their heads high and they can live without fear of anyone. He wishes that people of his country should not be divided by narrow considerations, especially of caste and creed. He also wishes that the people should be truthful and they should not be slaves to dead customs and old habits. He further writes, where words come out from the depth of truth, that is, where everybody realizes the truth. He wishes that the people should be truthful. He further writes, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where tireless striving, tireless without getting tired, people should strive, continue to stretch its arms towards perfection, stretch their arms in order to gain perfection. People should make efforts and tireless efforts to gain perfection. He further writes, where the mind is led forward by thee. Thee stands for God. He is addressing God and he is telling God that the minds of the people should be led forward by God. Where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action. That means people should have a broadened imagination and ever widening thoughts, that is, they must have progressive thoughts as well as actions. According to him, the minds of people should always be inspired by God into thoughts and actions which always become wider. They should be open-minded. And it is his sincere prayer that his country should wake up from its sleep of slavery and turn itself into a heavenly, free country. We can thus summarize that Tagore prays to God that his country should be an ideal country where people have fearless minds and people are able to hold their heads high in self-respect. It should be a free country where knowledge is accessible to everyone. For the world, he dreams that people should not be narrow-minded and fight with each other and act as barriers and break the world and countries into smaller countries. They should live peacefully, united with each other. He also wishes that in the free India, people should speak and write the truth. They should make unremitting and untiring efforts in order to gain perfection. They must not be slaves of old habits and customs and superstitions, because all these things are like a dry desert in which a clear stream of reason loses its way. In the end, Rabindranath Tagore says that the minds of his countrymen should always be inspired by God Almighty into thoughts and actions which always become wider and wider. He prays to God sincerely that his country should wake up into an heaven of freedom, into a paradise where there is freedom for everyone. So he wishes that his countrymen should move forwards with their head high and seek guidance from God, ever expanding in their actions and thoughts until India is converted into a heaven for from freedom. Sorry, heaven of freedom.